Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's edition of the Players NIL Industry Insider Podcast. My industry insider today is Jonathon Stern. John, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Mark. It's such a pleasure to be able to speak to you. I've been such an admirer of everything that you've done professionally, and it's a real honor to be able to have this conversation with you today.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And, one of the things that we try to do here is just educate people about all the craziness in the NIL era, which is what I refer to it as. And one of the things that has occurred since day one, and obviously before day one, was the advent of the use of technology and how technology can streamline deals, athletes, marketing, promotion, branding, fundraising. We want to talk about that today with your company, Rally. But I also have a little bit of a history of asking some personal questions. So, I'll just say, Jonathan, what is your history? What is your background? What is your why? Why do you love sports so much?
Great. Great question because it basically says, how is John Stern John Stern? It's so much of the DNA of who I am and who I've been over the course of my life. I grew up as a lifelong sports fan. My kids are 20, 16, and 11. They're sports fans as well. It's really been the connective glue for my friends, for my family, to who I am. And I've really spent the last 20 years of my professional career really focus on the intersection of celebrity and sport and building content, commerce, community, and culture. So early in my career, after starting as a talent side entertainment attorney, I worked at Red Bull. I worked with a lot of amateur and professional athletes. We also were the first to talk about digital technology to break the internet. We dropped a guy 120,000 feet down to earth in a project we called Red Bull Stratos. And at the time, it was the most concurrent streams in the history of the internet. And over the course of that career, I've really worked with companies going through massive opportunities to really grow and develop within the sports community. And I've also worked around content and production. So I helped produce shows and run strategy for companies that made Keeping Up with the Kardashians and Project Runway and Real World. And most recently, I ran a media company that we launched with Giannis Antetokounmpo, the Greek freak, and Jay Williams, who's sort of the face of college basketball for ESPN. And through the course of of all those years, really came to an appreciation for what you just described, Mark, which is this wild west of NIL. And we see one thing that's changing and one thing that's unchanging. The thing that's totally unchanging is college sports fandom is massive. We have almost half of Americans are college sports fans. 70 million of them are rabid sports fans. And about the thing that's changing is that for the first time, athletes can be paid for their name, image, and likeness. And we have universities that are clamoring to find ways to build their programs around that. We have brands that are trying to find ways to utilize the celebrity of collegiate athletes. And then the final piece, which is really where Rally comes in, and we can talk more about this today, is we have a really first in world history opportunity to create deeper connections between fans and athletes at the same time in a way that's totally unprecedented and no one's really cracked the code to do for before.
Okay, well, we got a lot to unpack there, but let's go back to the beginning a little bit. So you've been at this intersection of sports and entertainment, athletes, talent. You've seen an amazing transition. I'm going to say that the digital age changed everything because it gave us access.
Yeah.
I remember, I'm old enough to remember when I was a kid before ESPN, when you had to read a newspaper to get the stories, or in my case, every week run to the mailbox and get Sports Illustrated to get any access to sports content, right? On the entertainment side, we always went to the movies. We watched television shows, the great television era of the 1970s, where we became connected to entertainers. And then, shows like Entertainment Tonight and Access Hollywood started to leverage our fascination with stars. What's been the biggest? I understand digital technology has created access, but what's been the biggest change in the industry in the last 20 years, to use your time frame, in terms of, why do people love athletes so much? Why are athletes so more accessible? How have athletes changed? How have fans changed in the last 20 years?
It's a beautiful question because it touches on the thing that makes the sports environment so exciting today, which is exactly that. You mentioned these sort of icons or gatekeepers for sports and for entertainment. I still remember getting Sports Illustrated every week. I still remember the fact that there was even a time I grew up in LA and still live in LA now. Uh, the earliest that I can find out a score of a Lakers game was when it was broadcast on TV, and sometimes it was even on delay. And now we live in an environment where all of that has been totally disintermediated by technology and in large measure by social media. We now have somewhat of a one-to-one relationship between athlete and a fan in a way that we never could have imagined 20, 25 years ago. Um, we have always seen the um, team or the network or the magazine or the newspaper is that has always been the filter as how we've understood stories from athletes. And now today the athletes can speak directly to us. And the real unlock, which we'll talk about later today, is not only can athletes speak to us, but the essence of social media is that it's social. We can respond back. And for the first time in history, we can actually be in conversation between athlete and fan, and not only in a way that is unprecedented, but in a way that not only is inspiring to athletes, which I know in speaking to them all the time, but it's also inspiring to fans as well, because we can now celebrate fandom and engage in fandom in a way that isn't only just watching on TV. It isn't just going to a game. It's not just only paying for expensive merchandise. We now have a way in which we can have much closer connectivity to these people that we've admired for basically the entirety of our childhood and adult lives if we're lifelong sports fans. That's never really existed until really now, and particularly hasn't existed in collegiate sports until the Supreme Court voted in a 9-0 decision to actually allow athletes and fans to be connected this way, through the fact that they can now be compensated, and now that fans directly can actually compensate athletes, and create those sorts of connections in a way that didn't exist before.
Great answer. So you have experience at Red Bull, and I always laugh at Red Bull because many people think it's a drink company. They don't understand it's a media company.
That's right.
Um, and they've used the drink brand to attract fans and then created unbelievable media platforms and connected with athletes. In my opinion, is mostly extreme sport athletes and for a long time. In working with Red Bull and working with athletes, what makes a good athletic or athlete? What makes a good influencer? How do you identify an athlete that could be a good influencer for you? What are the traits that you look for? What are the things that they do? What are the things that they don't do that you try and stay away from? Help me go into that decision-making process of how do you choose an athlete as an influencer?
That's a great question. And this was something that I experienced not only from Red Bull, but also getting to work with Giannis and with Jay. And I would say the first principle, which is something that you'll hear from a lot of elite athletes, is you never want to forget that the main thing needs to be the main thing. So in other words, success in athletics creates a platform for you to be able to communicate with fans on a scale that's otherwise did not exist in history, and that notoriety creates opportunity. But that's not enough. And something Jay Williams has said a lot is if you spend so much time building your craft, it's also equally important, especially if you want to have a career off of the field of play, to think about how do we build our brand. And several of the principles that I think we see in really successful athletes who have transcended sport and transcended conversation, whether that's Giannis or LeBron James or going to the action sports world, Shaun White, are people that have a strong sense of self, are willing to take risks in telling their own story, and then finally are willing to be in a constant conversation with their fans. So, in other words, if we just look at this uniqueness of social media as just being a way to sell a product, the authenticity is often going to wear off. However, if you look at it as an opportunity to really engage in conversation, to listen, to have real-time data and feedback on the things that are important to you and its resonance, that kind of social listening is really, really a foundation to creating an impactful brand and an impactful influencer. And just to go just a little bit deeper than that, one of the things that you ultimately find is often we can look at people like Kim Kardashian. We produce Keeping Up with the Kardashians. Um, Often you'll see a business model that says, well, if only, Kim converted 1% of her audience to A, B, or C, look at what the revenue opportunity would look like. And what you ultimately find out with these megastars is those conversion rates only work when the thing that they are promoting is authentic and credible to that athlete or to that individual. And so that intersection of celebrity, authenticity, and then constant conversation, to me, those are really the key ingredients to making an impactful influencer. And sometimes the product or the story is going to resonate with fans and sometimes it's not. And it's going to come down at the end of the day to the DNA of the individual who is telling that story and the degree to which it resonates with audiences.
Yeah, well, dude, that's gold. I mean,
Uh,
I want to package that last 2 minutes because it's what we try to tell people, and obviously, some get it and some don't. If we think about modern athletes, there's some athletes that are more personable than others. I'm a big golf fan, for instance. Ricky Fowler hasn't won 1/10 of the amount of Scotty Scheffler. Scotty Scheffler is arguably the best golfer in the world right. Not arguably, he is the best golfer in the world right now, and arguably climbing that list of all-time greats. Yet Ricky Fowler probably sells more marketing dollars than Scotty Scheffler. So, I guess some of it is innate. You either have that personality or you don't. Have you worked with athletes that maybe had it and didn't know it, and you could coach them, or are there some athletes that they're never going to get it? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think so much in life comes down to how much do you want it and how much do you care about it.
Hmm.
So, there's this concept of people that are bloomed and groomed. So some people just have the natural talent and sometimes it has to be cultivated. And there is some handholding that goes along with that. There's other people who it may not come naturally, but it's important to them. And it's funny, this coffee mug that I'm drinking from right now says the following: never, never, never give up. It's actually not a completely authentic quote by Winston Churchill, but it's a paraphrase of something Winston Churchill said. And I think that that's what it comes down to. Often we see, even on athletics, um, athletes who on paper we would never think would be, successful, but they have that grit and determination and somehow they break through. And there's others that don't. And that sort of determination, when it succeeds in the world of sport, often you see that it's translatable in the world of social media and really brand building and creating conversation between athlete and fan.
Yeah, great stuff. Well, let's talk about what you're currently working on. A company called Rally. The NIL space, as I mentioned in the early part of this conversation, has created all kinds of opportunities. It's created an opportunity for me in the education space. And technology is a big part of that. One of the challenges of college athletics going forward will be fundraising, making money so that they can revenue share and compete. We're seeing in college football a wider separation between the haves and the have-nots, actually. It's
Yeah.
interesting. What did you identify in this NIL collegiate space as an opportunity, and how does Rally solve that problem?
Right. That's the ultimate question. And I'd say there were three trends that I saw working on college campuses, working with athletes like Jalen Milroe, who was at Alabama last year, is now playing for the Seahawks. And here's what I saw. One is, as I said earlier, uh, college sports fandom is not going anywhere, and there's massive love. Universities now, now that they're in an environment where they can help pay for athletes to actually participate at the university, are becoming more and more strained, not only to recruit the what they call the revenue generating athletes, but also to support the non-revenue generating sports and even the 80th man on the bench on the football team on the revenue generating team. Uh, how do you create that in an environment where donors or boosters are being asked to write bigger and bigger checks year in and year out? And then the third piece, which you alluded to, Mark, is in some of the dirty little secrets of collegiate athletics, is about 86% of all college athletes live at or below the poverty line. And relatedly, less than 60% just of all Division One athletes are on any form of college scholarship, let alone on a full ride. So if you take all those pieces together, Rally comes to, in sort of one fell swipe, address a lot of these problems. And we basically created a first of kind commerce marketplace for college sports fans. And what we do is we empower and reward our fans for financially supporting their favorite athletes. And we do this in a really elegant way where we're not going to ask them to change their behaviors. You use a credit card, and with every swipe, you can support any athlete or athletes of your choice. And at the same time, you get to unlock a rewards market that creates that connectivity that couldn't exist before. So imagine an opportunity. You mentioned that you're a golfer, to have your favorite collegiate golfer look at your swing and tell you how you can improve it. Think about, I have a daughter who's a basketball player, having her favorite basketball player rally her and her teammates before a big playoff game and showing up on a Zoom. Or think about any other opportunities to really have a virtual, in-person, real-life opportunity with athletes. This couldn't be done before. And these are the kinds of things that fuel fandom in a way that become indelible memories and experiences. Personally, I've been in countless sporting events over the course of my life. Some of my most meaningful, memorable experiences are the direct connections that I had between me and a particular athlete. We're creating that ecosystem, we're creating that environment in a way that fuels fandom, puts money in pockets for athletes in a really light touch, an easy, effective way. And then finally, a support system to universities as well, because we provide other ways to support these athletes in a way that universities don't own that infrastructure or have the infrastructure to actually provide or to support.
So let's break it down into really simple steps. As a fan, I want to support my alma mater. I want to support the athletes in the program. How does it work?
It's great. You sign up for the credit card, and just by way of example, we're going to be soft launching, planning early next year, and then we'll have the hard launch next year. But you sign for the card in a official way, but that's when the fun begins. So once you apply for the credit card, you've been approved, you get to choose the athlete or athletes that you want to support. You have several points that you could allocate either to your own points or over to the athlete. The points that go to the athlete are instantly monetizable. And then the other fun part, which is different than a traditional credit card, is you also can kind of aggregate your points with your other friends. So if you think about the fact that I like to say that your flight from LA to Tokyo, there's only one person that can sit in that business class seat. Imagine be like be able to pull all those points together so you and your friends could have an activity together with your favorite athlete or with your favorite athletes. And what we've done at the end of the day is we're letting the everyday fan have the experience of being a booster, and really impacting not only collegiate sports, but getting rewarded in a way that only boosters have really been until the launch of Rally.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great. If we want to learn more, want to follow the journey, where do we find Rally?
Fantastic. You can go to our website. You can go to rallycard.com. And we also have an Instagram account that's just launching. That's at Rally Pays. And right now that's going to be, you'll have to be approved because it's really being for the athletes that are starting to join our ecosystem. But if you come in early and if you let us know that you found us through the podcast, we'll let you in. And you'll see continued updates through our website and through upcoming announcements that you'll see not only across social media and LinkedIn, but also through the press in the coming weeks and the coming months.
Awesome. Well, Jonathan, you've got a great background in sports marketing, one that probably is the envy of a lot of people that are sports fans. And you're probably one of the coolest persons at every party that you go to because of your experience. I love that. I worked in one of those businesses for a while too. It's pretty good. But more importantly, is you figured out a way to use that experience to help athletes, which is what I care about. And I want to say thank you for being on the podcast, and let us know if there's anything else you want to talk about. Otherwise, we wish you nothing but success.
Thank you, Mark. It's been an absolute pleasure, and look forward to continuing this conversation in the months and years ahead.
Okay, great.